Welcome to part 6 in our journey to Solo, a Star Wars story series. We've read through all the major legend stories surrounding Han Solo's past, so this week we're going to shift gears to Lando Calrissian, since we know he'll be playing a significant part in the movie. He only has 3 stories about his life before the films, and they were collected into the Lando Calrissian Adventures by L. Neil Smith. They're basically the Lando version of the Han Solo adventures that we talked about a few weeks back. Lando Calrissian and the Mindharp of Sharu picks up Lando's story from another book we've covered, the Hutt Gambit. Lando heads to the Oseon system where he wins a droid in a game of sabacc. Unfortunately, it's in storage on another nearby planet where an extremely valuable resource called life crystals are grown and harvested. Lando picks up the droid, who is named Vuffi Ra, and the two are quickly grabbed by the police and forced to search for a legendary artifact called the Mindharp of Sharu. They're forced into this because they match some old myths about a traveler and his companion unlocking the secrets to the Shahru, who were an extinct but highly advanced race. They recover the Mindharp, and its activation awakens the Shahru people and their hidden civilization, which results in catastrophe for the planet and its life crystals. Lando and Vuffi Ra escape with the last load of crystals that will ever be harvested. Their actions create an enemy in a sorcerer named Rokur Gepta, who is attempting to get the Mindharp for himself. The Flamewind of Oseon picks up later, after they've grown rich off their life crystal cargo, but it's clear someone is out to murder them. Lando is invited to a high-stakes game of sabacc, and while he's there, someone tries to assassinate him. He kills the man in self-defense and is put in jail. To get out, the local government demands he help apprehend one of the richest men in the galaxy on drug charges during an event called the Flamewind, which makes flying in the Oseon very dangerous. When Lando attempts to arrest his target, he finds Rokur Gepta instead, seeking revenge for the Mindharp humiliation. He tortures Lando, but is interrupted by a strange mercenary group seeking revenge on Vuffi Ra, who they believe is responsible for their planet's destruction. Lando and his droid friend are able to escape, and they steal 20 million credits from the dead rich man's house along the way. The Starcave of ThonBoka follows Lando and Vuffi in a gamble to remove their pursuers. They travel to an Imperial blockade where billions of sentient creatures that live in space are being starved to death. They break through the blockade to offer hope to the dying Oswaft species, and also to draw out Rokur Gepta and the mercenaries, believing their quarry to be trapped by the blockade. Lando rallies the Oswaft to fight against the Empire, who are handily defeated. Rokur Gepta is killed, and the mercenaries learn that Vuffi Ra was not responsible for their home's destruction after all, but was under orders from an Imperial spy who also dies during the fight. The Oswaft people give Lando a cargo hold full of gemstones, and he and Vuffi fly back to Nar Shaddaa, where their story continues in the Hutt Gambit. I'm gonna be honest here, I was not a fan of these stories. This was my first time reading them, and it was hard for me to get through them. I think a lot of that can be chalked up to the fact that they were written in the early 80s, a time when Splinter of the Mind's Eye and the Han Solo Adventures were the only Star Wars books published. My biggest gripe was that they felt too big to be Lando stories. Lando is a gambler and a scoundrel, and that's where he thrives. In fact, there are scenes where Lando is playing sabacc, and when he's in his element, the stories are really good. But most of them are about saving entire worlds or civilizations, and he has this uber-powerful force-using sorcerer after him. They just didn't feel appropriate for Lando. Everything felt like it was just a little bit off of what I expect from Star Wars somehow. That said, I think we all owe L. Neil Smith for creating the basis of the rules for sabacc, which are still used today. I also liked how all 3 of these stories were independent but built to a climax, which is something I think the Han Solo adventures could have benefited from more. But let's talk about the Lando adventures in the context of Solo, a Star Wars story. Will any elements of these stories make it into the movie? Sabacc is an obvious one. We will almost definitely see a game or two featuring Lando, and probably the one where he loses the Falcon to Han. Speaking of the Falcon, at this point in the Legends timeline, Lando still owns the ship. He isn't the best pilot, and he relies on Vuffi Ra to handle most of the flying. I could see that making its way into the film as well. Lando uses the Falcon more as a party bus. He's an entertainer, not a hotshot pilot. Maybe that's why he has L337 helping him out, and maybe that's why we see Han in the pilot's seat during what is probably the Kessel Run. Another thing I liked about this book is how Lando views his wardrobe. We know he'll be flashy and stylish in the movie because he always has been. In these stories, Lando talks about his clothes a lot. When something gets ripped or dirty, his reaction always made me laugh. I think that could be a decent source of in-character comic relief for the movie. But other than those few things, my personal hope is that most of Lando's adventures stay firmly planted in Legends. I want Solo to be a much lower stakes film. A group of scoundrels on a heist just trying to get a big score. No galactic threats, no Force-using sorcerers, including Darth Vader. Let's just keep it small and fast and fun. But that's just my opinion, and no offense is intended if you love these stories, they just weren't for me. Actually, if you did love the Lando Calrissian Adventures, please let me know why in the comments. I'd be very interested to hear a different perspective. But that's it for today. Next week, we're going to cover the history of the Millennium Falcon in the book Millennium Falcon. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out my Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.